and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. You're very welcome to our preview show, and we're looking ahead to the Intermediate Championship semi-finals coming up in the Boxall Athletic Grounds this weekend. We're in the Boxall Athletic Grounds recording this pod, so we're going to be discussing the two games that are going to take place, two of the four that are going to take place out here this weekend. I'm delighted to be joined by Peter Nugent, and he's going to help me look ahead to the two intermediate clashes. And Peter, we'll just start with Grange and Sarsfields coming up here Saturday evening at 6 o'clock. Two of the informed teams in the championship so far, obviously both topped their group, two good wins in the quarterfinals, so it's a massive game for both sides.
Yeah, Sean, it's a big game. It's probably been two teams from the outset that probably would have been fancied to go pretty far in the competition, Sarsfields especially, given that they've come down from Division 1 last year. Grange, that sort of championship pedigree at this level and tradition. And probably if the rule changes have suited any teams in Armagh this year, Grange would be right up there as one of the teams that have probably profited the most in terms of it's really suited their style, their two-point kicking ability, and generally how they like to play the game on the front foot. So to see them two teams there, it's not a surprise at all.
I think that in terms of the 2 pointers, Peter, I know I was at their game against Anachmore, and I think that was the last group game possibly, and that was the big thing I came away with, just they're going to kick 2 pointers all day, and it was the same against Clonerne. You know, they got 3 or 4, maybe 5 2 pointers that evening. So in terms of 2 point threat, you mentioned that it probably suits Grange more than anybody else, but they're taking their chances when they're coming.
Aye, that's it. They're playing, I suppose, very economical football. I suppose the last day against Clonerne started the game really well on the front foot. We're probably coming out on top of most of the exchanges, but Grange were just able to stay in touch in the game when they weren't playing well through twos. And that's not always from play. That's dead balls. The way Ethan's kicking at the minute means that anything inside 55 metres, with the variability of the weather, you know, if it's a relatively calm day, anything inside 55 metres at both ends is going to be a problem for the opposition. So Grange probably have that in their locker above all other teams, and it means that they probably can afford to have periods in games where they're not going particularly well. They can afford probably to have a poor 15-20 minutes, but if they get 2 attacks, 3 attacks in that period, they're still maybe coming away with 65% plus return on scores. So if they get 4 points in a period where they haven't been playing well through 2-2s, then, you know, realistically they haven't you know, failed behind or lost any momentum in the game. So that's been a massive thing, and probably is something that you're going to look forward to this weekend and say it's going to be very difficult for Sarsfields to beat Grange if Sarsfields can't match. Don't have to go score for them on twos, but they're going to have to kick 3 or 4, I think, because Grange could be value for between 5 and 8, depending on the circumstances.
Well, something about Sarsfields, maybe not so much in this championship campaign, but in years gone by, goals have been their big thing. And I'm trying to just think off the top of my head, they've maybe got 2 or 3 goals in this championship, so not their usual return, but it is something that they're sort of known for, is that goal threat.
Yeah, I think Sarsfields maybe haven't declared a full hand yet, Sean, in a lot of ways. I mean, they've Kevin McAlinton, who's been coming in off the bench and would be a noted goal scorer over the years for them, who sort of seem to be holding him back in games. But maybe this weekend they feel out here that this is the time to really let him off the leash and see, because he carries a massive goal threat. Tommy McAlinton as well, working his way back as well into fitness, carries a serious goal threat. Whichever of the McGoons that they'll play probably closer to goal is going to carry a massive goal threat. And probably if they're looking at Grange, they'll say, well, you know, where are Grange most vulnerable? It's probably in transition when you can get the game opened up in Grange. And I've seen these two teams playing maybe 3 years ago in a league game down in Trosna, and it was just bang, end to end, goals, points rained in all evening really. But both teams, I think, have come a long way in terms of not being as naive, and I think you'll see probably a bit of respect on both sides for the attacking threat at both ends of the field, and you'll probably see. Don't be surprised if it's cagey enough in the opening 15 or 20 minutes where people are probably just going to take a wee step back and maybe say, well, we don't want to fall 5-6 points behind here. So whilst there's a lot of attacking talent on the field, I do think you might see a cautious enough approach in the early going, especially when both teams get into that opportunity in that set defence. You could see caution where Sarsfields will maybe look to sort of profit on Grange, if they can get turnovers when Grange are high up. They know that probably that's their best opportunity of really exploiting Grange, is when they get that full back line maybe exposed in 1v1s with early deliveries.
Well, that you mentioned about the two McGoons, maybe whoever's playing closest to goal, just on experience, haven't played them this year myself and haven't seen them. Eamon's playing more in midfield. Paul's he's playing on the forward line, but he's not at full forward, which is interesting because that was a lot of their goal threat down through the years, was the two McGoons, maybe either two of them or one of them in the edge of the square, but they don't seem to be doing that. And Eamon McGoon particularly, he's got himself into brilliant shape and he's really playing well around the middle. So they have a different dynamic with their forward line. They can pick and choose. You know, the two Stevensons, the McAlyns that you mentioned, or you can put the big men in the edge of the square. So there's a lot to think about in terms of defending against Sarsfields.
Yeah, there's a nice variety in their play. Collie Stevenson up front, really diminutive. He'll be moving laterally across the line all day, showing, and that's probably the area of the field where Grange maybe aren't at their strongest. Is and they're quick to get men back now into closing out that space. And probably what's worked in Grange's favour so far, Sean, defensively, is they've been playing on smaller, narrower fields. Even Cloddy's it's not an overly expansively wide pitch, so it's quite easy maybe to close it out. Whereas out here on Saturday evening, it's going to be a different ball game, because it's well probably above regulation size, and it plays big and it plays open. So if you're caught in transition, it's a long way to scramble back and to plug the holes. And I think that'll be very much at the forefront of what Sarsfields want to do, and similarly Grange as well. But Sarsfields were thinking if we can get them turned and get early ball moving into that forward line, they'll back every one of their forwards to win their 1v1 battles. And
we're talking about out here, Peter, and I know Sarsfields haven't had much joy here, basically since it's been redeveloped, whatever that's 15 years now. And I'm thinking of games, intermediate semi-finals, like I think Tully-Sarn here not so long ago, Cullaville 2021, that they haven't been able to get over the line here, and obviously competing in the senior championship too, they've lost games out here. So is that in the back of their minds, do you think, or you have to end the hoodoo sometimes, I suppose?
I'd say it's not something they're really wanting to probably not appreciate us bringing it up here. I don't think it's something they'll be openly talking about too much in their own camp, because, well, if you start bringing that stuff to notice, then all of a sudden it does become a thing. So I think they'll be taking this game on its merits, Sean, and they'll be staring down the Grange challenge. They'll be looking at what Grange have, and they'll be looking at their own game. And they're unbeaten in the championship, 4 from 4. They finished second in Division 2A, and they finished the league really well. I think maybe they went like 7 wins or something like that on the bounce near the end of the league. So, I don't think they're going to be getting overly caught up in getting concerned about any possible hoodoos out here. If you'd asked them to play the game anywhere, they would probably still pick here to play it. And probably looking at what Grange have, you could make a case for saying that out here, if Grange had the choice of playing Sarsfields out here or playing them in a smaller, tighter field, Grange might prefer to play them in a tighter field. So I can see actually pros for Sarsfields in terms of playing the game here.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I suppose it's just a talking point. It's worth discussing. Maybe Sarsfields wouldn't appreciate that, but we'll see how it goes. In terms of matchups, Peter, we started the conversation talking about the 2-point threats that Grange have. Obviously, Ethan Rafferty's the main catalyst for that in terms of frees, open play as well. And at intermediate level, it's hard to get somebody that's going to match up against Ethan Rafferty, and it's a matchup that could go down to the side in the game. So how do you see Sarsfields dealing with them?
I think, Sean, on kickouts, it's a very difficult one. We can look at it one of two ways. We can look at it the way that Sarsfields are going to press Grange in, and for me that would be probably not in their best interests. I think Sarsfields' best route here is to drop off, get their inside forward line to drop out beyond the 45 and really congest the middle third of the field back towards their own 45, because David O'Hagan's kick can go 80 metres find his target. And when he sends it out there, he's got Ethan, he's got Owen, he's got Colin, and each of them boys nearly better than the next in the air. Owen's probably not as tall as the other two, but his hands are probably better. He's sensational in the air. His timing on a hanging ball is as good as I've seen anywhere. So, like, Sarsfields are really going to have their work cut out there, and there's only one of them. So if Grange split them 3 players across, say, between the halfway line and Sarsfields 45, 3 massive options there, and each one of them is very capable of taking 3, 4, 5, 6 kickouts clean in a game. The bigger element of the problem there is if you go to tag, double tag or triple tag Ethan, you're giving space to the others. And then what they're quite good at is winning frees in them areas on a kick out. So the Grange patent at the minute is just 2-kick football. So a really long kick out that's ignoring probably 2/3 of their team. They're looking at 3 targets beyond midfield. The ball's going to be secured, or there's going to be a scramble on the break, but more often than not, to win it. So from my perspective, I'm saying Sarsfields, flood your players back, really make, when O'Hagan looks up from the cone, that he sees as many hoop jerseys in that space as possible, and have Ethan, or have Ian McGowan probably tagging Ethan to begin with, and then get your next most prolific players in the air tagged across the other 2 options, and get as many surplus bodies in there as you can, so you can fight to the death on breaks. But that's where, if Sarsfields don't pay respect to that, that's where Grange will put daylight between the teams, because those boys are that good in the air.
And I suppose the flip side of it then, the Sarsfields kick out, you'd imagine Green's going to press up because of the advantage they have around the middle. So Sarsfields maybe having to deal with that in terms of trying to work a short. Are they going to have to work a couple of set plays here to get the ball? Yeah,
and I suppose the conditions will come into play as well. What you really don't want happening here is to be playing into the gale force breeze and Grange penning in, because they're just going to line big men out across the end range of your longest kick out, and it can be been on the end of it this year. It's not a good place to be, because you can go 8, 9, 10 minutes without maybe even getting a touch of the ball, because they can be that dominant. I'm sure Sarsfields will have acknowledged this, and if they watch the footage of Grange, they'll know that this is a massive strength of theirs, and they'll be prepared. They may have to just really double down on working hard to get sort of chip balls through the lanes, sort of chest height, driven balls out into spaces or in just beyond the 45-metre line. But it takes a lot of bravery to do it. It takes brilliant skill execution to do it. But we also can't discount that they've got Eamon out there, and Eamon hasn't lost too many midfield battles over the years either. So he'll be coming with his chest out, looking to put a marker down too.
Yeah, there's the 2 McGowans, Paul McGahey out there against the 3 Raverties. Colin McCann for Sarsfield's been really impressive as well. Luke Donnelly. So midfield battle is going to be massive, and it could be a deciding factor. Before we move on to the second semi-final, Peter, who do you see coming out on top here?
Put me on the spot here. I've been thinking this one over, and it was very, very difficult to probably make a call. If I'm going to go anywhere, I'm maybe just thinking that the Grange have that sort of wind in their sails at the minute. They're playing really good football, kicking football that takes so little out of the ball. They're not dependent. Grange aren't dependent on 12 or 13 men turning up here and having great games. They need probably 4 or 5 lads to turn up. Ben Toll and Aaron Rafferty up front. I think Clonard put their best defender on Dara Young on Ben Toll the last day. Did a reasonably good job on Ben, but Aaron Rafferty, who's in his debut season, comes in and kicks 0-3 from the other side. So where do Sarsfields send their best defender? Do they send him back to Ben, or do they push him on Darren, and then does that free the other one up? It's just, I just think if Grange can come, and I know how they approach championship football. They get big and they get strong at this time of the year, and they have that belief. And when there's a good vibe around that club, and when they really get going in the cut and thrust of championship football, they're very hard to stop. So really the 2 pointers is the big one, and if Ethan has a good day on frees, which he has more of than he doesn't now, his dead ball game has come on so much in the last couple of years, and Sarsfields are in any way careless, anywhere the backside of midfield, then it could be very, very difficult for him to just keep up with Grange in the twos, and I think that's what maybe might just swing it the road to the Grange.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you on that one. I think Grange will win that one too. I was really impressed with them against Clonard. Even, as you said, when maybe the game was going against them, they were still able to stick in there and they showed a real fight that night. So I'm going with the Grange, that one. St Paul's against Shane O'Neill's, I think this is a wee bit, this is another one, really just a flip of the coin. And I know we were talking offer, Peter, this could come down to two men that maybe aren't on the field and aren't going to be playing. That's Owen McConville for St Paul's and Conor Mackin for Shane O'Neill's. Mixed rumours and everything else. There's maybe Mackin's coming home from Australia, maybe McConville's going to be fit to play this one, but we'll not know the 5-5 on Sunday evening. But the game could be decided on whether these boys play or not.
Oh, absolutely. Two massive players for the respective sides. Owen's been, probably his game's developed and went on a couple of levels since he sort of came up to been in around the Armagh senior panel, and it probably is seen now more than just a free taker in that St Paul's team. He seems to be having a bigger influence in their overall sort of game and in their style, kicking scores from play, but also probably coordinating attacks from deeper as well. So if he's not available, I know they were able to get past Fork Hill without him, but that probably took really big games from a few others. Obviously Andrew's in a really good vein of form at the minute, and he's probably kicking more scores now than he's ever kicked for St Paul's. Or maybe times whenever he was playing and he was doing a lot of the unselfish work and a lot of the hard yards, but you've really seen this year like he's been kicking big scores, and that's well, they've needed it, you know. And Anton McBarlin playing a wee bit more advanced now. I think they used to play Anton maybe in like wing forward and sort of half back positions. He seems to be playing right up at the minute, and he's making a big cut at the minute for them. He's kicking scores and probably filling that void. The one not being in the team, he's really stood up. He's capable of scoring goals. He can kick from distance. He can come in off the lane. His movement's good, so you know he's been a big addition for them. Playing up front off Andrew at times, or Al McCarry, or whoever goes in. The one thing about St Paul's is they want to go as direct as quickly as they possibly can, and they'll more often than not they'll sub one of those two lads between Al McCarry and Andrew inside, and they'll always give them that longer ball option. And you've seen them over the years just get so many scores off top downs and, you know, just sort of picking up the crumbs and kicking easy scores from areas that, you know, are just really hard to defend against. So that's obviously St Paul's blueprint. Shane O'Neill's, I've been really impressed with Shane O'Neill's this year. I think Ram McShane there's doing a great job with them. We played them in the second round of the group, and they were really well organised that day, very patient when they had to be. Used the width of the field really well, used runners really well. Greg McCabe and Conor Mackin that day were excellent in the first 20 minutes, really set the tempo for them. But it's far from a two-man show, and even the last day against Derrynoosh you could see decent spread of scores. The typical Shane's blueprint in my mind would always be really good, you know, not necessarily the man on the ball, but the support element in their best teams, in their 2022 team. And I can see it here again. There's a strong ethic in the team. Very few weak players, which is something, if you look around intermediate, you could probably pick through every team and say 3 or 4 players, yeah, well, we maybe get at them. I don't really see that in Shane O'Neill's. I think nearly every one of their first 15, you can see their purpose. You can see how they contribute to the overall flow of the team. They've even got guys at the back that come forward with regularity and kick scores. Pierce McGurr at 5, Beattie coming up from the back. Obviously Greg and them boys, you know, are that just, for me, that probably puts Shane's out there as being at the minute the most rounded team left in the competition.
I think, was it the county final 2-3 years ago out here was the last time they've probably met in championship.
Yeah.
And St Paul's, they no reminding of how that went. They were obviously ahead later on, and Paul O'Rourke got a late goal. So
and St Paul's played really well that day.
They were brilliant.
St Paul's
they were brilliant.
Niall McCarry was outstanding that day, and you know, I think that was, out of all the defeats maybe St Paul's have had here, that's arguably the hardest one for them to take, because like they had it won. But again, it shows the virtues of sort of just sticking with it. And as you say again, look, a lot of it will come down to player availability. If Conor Mackin is available for Shane O'Neill's, he gives them extra physicality, gives him leadership. He'll control the tempo. He'll be able to go up 1-to-1, arguably against Andrew Murnan out the field, and probably will free up Greg McCabe to a degree then to do more going forward, which they'll need. You know, a lot of it's going to come down to it. It's very hard here at the minute just to make a call on it because we don't really know who is or isn't going to be available. But it's set up to be a really good game.
Well, two of the players we do know, you'd mentioned Andrew Murnan and Greg McCabe. Again, it's so hard to preview whether this is going to be the matchup or not because we don't know. You know, is Murnan going to play midfield? Is he going to play full forward? If McConville's in there, then he'll likely come out. If Conor Mackin's playing, he could pick up Murnan, both inside and outside. But just that game a couple of years ago, I remember me and you were previewing that in a podcast, and we were going over whether it was going to be Conor Mackin or Greg McCabe was going to mark Andrew Murnan, and it was actually Kieran Mackin went back in. So he's obviously not available. Conor possibly not available. It leaves Greg then having to maybe they're going to have to sacrifice him to possibly play on Andrew Murnan.
Yeah,
and is
you
that
wouldn't be
taken away
down.
from them?
Yeah, you wouldn't be down about that idea. I can see how they'll maybe in a set defence set up, maybe allow him to drop in as a +1 in on top of whichever nominal player St Paul's want to use in there as the target man. But I think Shane O'Neill's will probably look at it and say, you know, for them to progress to the county final, you know, they're going to need Greg McCabe really at the hub of everything to do going forward here. And he is in a good vein of form. He was very composed and picked his moments well against Derrynoosh to get forward. And a lot of what they do in attack in terms of being patient comes off him being there and his organisation. So do I see him potentially sacrificing his game for a battle that he may not win anyway, because we've got to recognise just how good Andrew is. I think Shane's maybe best served by just sort of letting him play his game in the main and find another suitor for Andrew, and probably putting the emphasis on the players to you know, work extra hard to stop the supply. And if you can get Andrew Turnden coming out the field, he's obviously slightly easier to tag. You can maybe get Greg picking him up then if he is playing further out the field. The last thing Shane's want is just a bombardment of early ball going into 1v1 situations. Doesn't matter who's marking him in that case because he's going to come out on top.
Yeah, and now you mentioned now McCorry going inside. He played inside for most of their game against Forkhill. He did come out in the second half, and him and Andrew would have switched inside, but he was really good in the first half against Forkhill because they were playing with the breeze, and he set up the goal. He got maybe 2 points and just a complete headache for any fullback. So we're going to likely see that long ball game, but Shane O'Neill's maybe a bit more running style. Peter, would that be fair to say?
Yeah, as I said, John, I'm just really impressed with their overall use of the ball the day we played them, and I've seen that again last week the week before against Derrynoosh. And probably it was a wet day and a damp day and hard conditions for football. So I've seen them against Clonard, seen them against ourselves, seen them against Derrynoosh, and I'd say they've got a wee bit more polished looking nearly every day. Conlon floating in around the forward line is really, really important to them because again his decision making is good invariably, and that's what you want at the top end of the field. You want people that are going to make more good decisions than that. Rui O'Brien coming off that. Young O'Hare has been a real revelation for him this year. You know, when you're thinking about what you need to do to stop them, he's sort of come in this year a bit on the blind side, and he's tagging on 2, 3, 4 points a game. Very direct, very pacey, great first touch, and then you look at that and they've got him and O'Brien, Paul O'Rourke. All of a sudden you're looking at that forward line thinking there's a lot of fires to put out there, and you add that into the running power coming from the half back line, the full back line. McCabe's around the middle, and it's a lot to deal with. And I know they didn't have a great league campaign, but obviously the boost that the couple of extra men coming in from the county season has given them, and probably being able to get their whole panel together now and get that collective bank of working is obviously starting to stand to them.
Well, Peter, we both went for the Grange, the first one. Who we're going with here?
I think I'm going to give a hesitant vote to Shane's on this one. I just think they're all round. I think there's no shortage of firepower on both sides, and St Paul's will leave it all out there. They'll go early, they'll go long, a lot of it will depend on how Shane O'Neill's can deal with that. They've got Fitzy in goals, who maybe his outfield experience will really come into play there, and he can sort of step out in that sort of keeper sweeper role, which could be a massive factor in how to deal with them sort of longer balls coming in. I just think the overall cohesion in the Shane O'Neill's team, again, I think every player really serves a purpose. I don't really see many weak links anywhere across their team for this level, and I think just on that basis they've showed composure. It doesn't have to be a thriller scoring game for them to win. They're well oiled at the back, and they play with a wee bit of tenacity in the tackle, and going forward they have probably just enough, I think, to maybe get over the line here.
I'll go with St Paul's just to mix it up and be a wee bit different. So that's our intermediate preview. Obviously we'll find out who makes the junior and intermediate finals this weekend. 2 double headers, all 4 games live on Armagh TV. So make sure to join us for all 4 of them games, and tune in for our podcast hopefully on Sunday evening, and we'll be looking back at all 4 games. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks to our sponsors for helping us out this year. Thanks to Peter, and thanks to Sean behind the camera as well. So we'll chat to everybody on Sunday evening.